Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Sofie Marin. I'm founder and CEO of Arts Dynamics. We are an arts entrepreneurship education company passionate about empowering creatives with all the strategies, tools, and connections needed to stand out and to scale up and to make a bigger impact in the world. And every week I speak with a leading creator, a thought leader, an expert in the field of arts and tech and impact and entrepreneurship on Earth and soon also in space. And today is, as always, no exception. And I have to say that I am so happy to be able to speak with the guest that we have with us today, because I've been following her for a while on LinkedIn. I've been tuning into her posts, to her messages, to her stories. And a real one when you see one, when someone is walking the walk, they know what they're talking about and also has a fresh perspective. So, Lauren Ingram, you are the founder of Women of Web3, and you have a long history of speaking of the creative industries, but also in tech, and we're going to talk about inclusion, and we're going to talk about so many things. But first, I just want to say welcome to the Arts Dynamics Talks, the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very flattered by that introduction, so happy to be here.
It's fantastic to speak with you. And I realized as I was planning this interview today that we actually have more things in common that I knew at the beginning, because I actually watched your TEDx talk. And we will actually post a link to that talk in the show notes, because it was you shared such a strong story about, who you are, what led you to do what you're doing today. And I would just love it if you could help share that with the audience who are here today, a little bit about your background and what has led you to be who you are and to do what you're doing today.
Of course, yeah, I'm excited to share more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my background is I've spent I think it's about it's over a decade. I actually don't know how old I am, but over a decade across creativity and tech companies. So anywhere from tiny little tech startups of just a few people, all the way up to working at Meta when it was about Facebook when it was about 70,000 people. And in that time, I've kind of jumped around a little bit between different roles. I think I've had shiny object syndrome to some extent, but always been interested in the intersection of things like the creative industries and creative work, technology, business, and essentially people. And like, how do changes in technology and creativity impact the people that make use of those things, or impact their careers? So that led to, while I was at Meta for a couple of years, at the end of my contract, because you can only do a sort of maximum of 2 years as a contractor there, even though you're given the same level of freedom to do everything that a full-timer does. Coming to the end of that, and I'm trying to go permanent, and this was a year into the pandemic, and I was thinking, okay, it's a really tricky jobs market, and at that point is when I found out I was pregnant as well, and so went into kind of full panic stations that we were starting a family, not at the point that we planned to, and so then so essentially like finished my job 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, didn't have a job to go to, and was really trying very hard to get a permanent job, because I was kind of very fixated on, okay, it needs to be a permanent role, so I get maternity leave and maternity pay. Otherwise, like for me, the otherwise box was a kind of like disaster. I could not see any other alternative of, like, you basically like die if you don't have maternity set up, is kind of what we're led to believe. So I tried really, really hard to get a job. I checked my spreadsheet yesterday, actually, of my old spreadsheet from 2021, and I applied for 106 jobs. I interviewed for about 25 of those, had something like 60 interview sessions in total, and obviously getting more and more pregnant along that time. But luckily they were all on Zoom, because it was still during lockdown, like one of the second or third or fourth, however many lockdowns. And so it was just a really weird time. And the more I was trying to be like, yeah, sure, I can do marketing, I can do project management, I can do business, I can do technology, I can do creativity. And because I was just trying so hard to be like, just give me any job, I then completely lost sight of, like, actually, what am I good at? What do I care about? Who knows? And so I had almost like this kind of, I feel like I've had to sort of relearn myself since then, of like, so since having a baby, I did take on a couple of freelance bits during that time, during my pregnancy, but I ultimately felt like a failing, of like I'd failed to go permanent. I had only managed to sort of get some freelance stuff in the door. Don't know why I was so absolute about that. I think it was maybe partly hormonal and just thinking I just need to like provide for my little cub. So in pregnancy and then having a young baby, I was thinking, okay, what thing do I need to learn about to get back into big tech and sort of secure my position in that space? So I started learning about things like NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, but don't worry about what fungibility means for the meantime. But I knew that kind of NFTs and digital art, that looked interesting. The metaverse looked interesting. There was this whole kind of culture around it, and I got completely drawn into it and was like, right, this looks great. Actually, I realized I missed a key part that Sofie and I talked about before the call, which is as well as it being a really tough jobs market and so various things that made a tough pregnancy, I also lost a close friend when I was 8 months pregnant. So my best friend and I were actually so it was my best friend's younger brother. Me and her were both 8 months pregnant. We had babies due the same day, and her brother died suddenly, and we weren't expecting it at all. And it was just a really, really weird time, and of like I missed the funeral because I was in hospital having my baby. It was just a time of huge, huge shift. I don't know if you were looking for like the long version of the story, but this is the kind of this is how I ended up sort of learning about some of the more emerging areas of technology. Is I just needed, a distraction, a new thing. And also when I had my very young sort of potato age baby, you do need something else to kind of give you a bit of like brain stimulation of like, when they're really tiny, they can't really do very much. So they are a little bit boring. Let's let's be honest. But as amazing as it was, and like I didn't have any issue bonding with my baby. It was just, they just can't talk back. They can't do anything. You just wipe the bum. And so the more I learned about this stuff, it was kind of like, okay, NFTs look interesting. Metaverse, even cryptocurrency seems to be all part of this same broader thing called Web3, Web 3.0, the third major iteration of the internet. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe more than just learning about this stuff. Maybe I need to actually like sort of full pivot of like, I need to go and work in this because it looks so interesting. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm seeing a real lack of women. There's definitely a lack of representation. It actually felt like quite a hostile environment to be a woman, to be honest. And because what I'd worked on at Meta was running these large scale, essentially training programs for women and like female communities. So things like She Means Business, Agency Women's Leadership Day. They've got lots of kind of owned programs where they train women. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I can model, like, make use of some of that and apply that in an area that feels like it really needs it. As I say, it's quite hostile to women. And what change can I make? And at that point, I didn't actually think it could be a real business. It was just something that I was so passionate about that that was sort of trying to sort of breastfeed my baby while scrolling on my phone, learning about all this stuff and dropping food on my baby's head, trying to stay on top of all of it. And then it just seemed really fascinating, and it just felt like, okay, there's such huge opportunity in this area. And so I felt like I've had to sort of relearn my skills, relearn who I am, work out who I am as a mum and as a person that is in technology / creativity, the creative industries. So it's been a wild ride, and I realized that was quite a long answer to a first question, but I hope that sort of gives the full context of like I was kind of at my lowest at the point that I found all of this area of technology, and actually it ultimately ended up being a really good route to come into.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that little bit longer story. The reason why we're even covering this, I guess, is because I just feel it's important to talk about the real stuff behind, why we're doing what we're doing. And we are going to dive in deep into the tech today, and I'd love to pick your brain and your advice and so forth. But what we're talking about now is important. And I feel as if we don't talk about these things much enough. Do you say that in English? Well, basically, first and foremost, I see often that women and parents, especially women with young children or, being pregnant and going through that sort of transition of life, are often the drivers of this new digital economy. They are at the very forefront of new technology and trying new things out. They are the new digital nomads and laptop entrepreneurs, and are not often seen, because when we talk about tech and we talk about creativity in tech and impact and innovation, is often, as you say, we see these sort of more sort of hyped up startups or scale ups. We have investors coming in looking for the next unicorn, but we have this huge market of actually a lot of both women and people who would not describe themselves as white men. Let's be honest, whoever that might be, and even talking about it can seem controversial to some. And I just feel like it's so important to just address the fact that there are so many competent women out there, and things like this happen. We moved to the UK in 2006, me and my family, and I was pregnant then with my second child. And you're based in London, right? Because we also lived in London. So those years also shaped actually what became now Arts Dynamics. I went through a sort of a similar journey. Things happened. I had to figure things out. Started my business from my phone, and was looking for a way to run my business from the cloud, which in the UK was not that easy, because when it rained, I couldn't be on the phone because, the services didn't work somehow. I don't know if you've experienced that. We had that in southwest of London anyway. But the Guardian even did a piece on that, because it was very early days of, the cloud, when you work together and using, digital marketing and sales as a strategy to grow your business. So I'm just curious because, as an educator, as you say, you work at Meta. Well, let's just go a little bit deeper into that. What was that exactly? What did you do when you were running those programs?
Yes, so I was previously working in a digital agency, and I had actually just started a new job when I got approached by Facebook or Meta to say, do you want to come and do this 3-month contract? So essentially coming in and consulting on, my cat is interested to come and join the show. One sec. Sorry.
We are live, everybody. So.
So I was brought on essentially like a consultant for 3 months, and they said, we run all these women's programs, essentially it's a female empowerment programs. So She Means Business would sort of train up women on Meta's products like Facebook and Instagram, like, essentially how to use digital marketing to grow your business. They recognise the lack of female entrepreneurs and the lack of support for them. And so I was tasked with not just running that stuff, but initially just to kind of create a strategy around this stuff of I suppose like the honest version is they were doing the right thing of like, they were kind of thinking, okay, we need to like support women. We'll create all these different programs. They're spending millions of dollars on all these different programs, but it didn't sort of ladder up to a larger, it didn't ladder up to a broader strategy or value proposition. And so they needed support with making that happen. It's kind of, we know we're doing the right thing. It just doesn't, we're not all singing from the same hymn sheet. It's a bit sort of scattergun. And so can you come and help us work out, what are we spending on it? What can we do better? How can we better support women? How can we better actually communicate even with like the sort of HR type of side of the business? Is what we're doing reflective of our own values and our own, how many women we have at every level of the business. So it was a really interesting exercise. And so they kind of kept me on more and more and more. So initially I wasn't sure if I should have left my agency job just to go into a 3-month contract, but it was partly it looked amazing anyway. Partly, obviously, I'm very easily sold on free food, but the third big thing was that somebody called Nicola Mendelsohn, she's now sort of one below the Sheryl Sandberg level of Facebook, but she was, I think she's been sort of promoted in the interim, but she's the most senior person for Facebook in Europe at that point. And I'd known of her in ad land, advertising agency land, for a long time, and just was. I suppose she was a sort of inspiring leader, inspiring woman in business, and the fact that I knew I'd be working closely with her and running her International Women's Day events and things like that, and it was like, wow, that's a really cool opportunity. I suppose she's the kind of like the mini Sheryl Sandberg, and she's somebody I really looked up to, and it was like, you get to work closely with Nicola on all these things, and a women's strategy at Facebook. So when I nearly turned the role down because I was like, oh, it's only 3 months, maybe I shouldn't leave my permanent job for this, and my partner and even my dad were like, what are you doing? This job description looks like what you'd want to do in your spare time. Why would you even consider turning that down? So I stayed on longer and longer, working on kind of broader diversity. I suppose essentially there were sort of diversity and marketing programs. I think with great intentions, and I think actually we did deliver a lot of great stuff. I suppose a lot of it is just kind of purely focused on women. It wasn't sort of thinking about diversity and inclusion more broadly. And I'll also be honest that I wasn't sure when starting Women of Web3, would that almost be like taking a step backwards of like just purely focusing on women? Like, is that inclusive enough? Like there's the sort of lack of intersectional thinking there. But it felt like Web3 is so in the Stone Ages when it comes to anything inclusion. It felt like actually we just need to address the women thing first, was the reason I've taken that route. But I'm sort of trying to show up with our values. And so what I wouldn't want is that Women of Web3 and other equivalent organizations shouldn't only support or give privilege to people that already have a lot of privilege. So that's also why we sort of made everything that we make is for free. So like all of our events, including things like 3-course dinners, the podcast, and like anything and everything we make will be for free for our community. So that there's no it keep it accessible to everyone, and no barriers to entry, because there's quite a lot of barriers to entry in tech and Web3 anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And just understanding what all the words mean. And there is a lot of slang. I know that you touched upon that too. So the world itself has a lot of when you don't understand the language and you don't know how to communicate about it, that's hard in itself. And then if you also don't really feel welcome, it can be harder. I know you mentioned somewhere that 9 out of 10 founders of Web3 startups, there's only 1 in 10, I think you mentioned, was a woman of founders of Web3 startups. And I would like to hear your take on why is this important? Why is it? We're seeing a lot of comments here. I'm going to go into them soon. So thank you so much for commenting. And yes, if you are with us live, do comment. And if you have any questions as well for Lauren or myself, just let us know. Just post them in the comments. But Lauren, I would love to hear your take. Gender equality, as you said, equity, inclusion, intersectionality. Why is that important? Why do we have to care about that in the world of tech, Web3, and the next generation of internet? Why is that important for real?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked it in that sort of direct sense of like, I think because it's something that I just feel in my core of like is the right thing to do. But actually, it does need more explanation than that in a way, which is technology should be in the hands of everyone. Like any of these products, especially if they benefit our lives in some way, should be accessible to everyone. And that if you only have one type of person building that product, selling that product, and kind of leading those businesses that will ultimately, I think, be commercially very successful, you're only going to be sort of speaking to one type of customer. And so it from a commercial point of view, like there is actually a really good reason to diversify your workforce and diversify, who you're speaking to. But even from whether you're speaking from a commercial viewpoint or the kind of essentially the more moral standpoint of we need more women in tech, we need diversity in tech, or any leaders in business, I do feel it's the right thing to do. But it's also, if we're talking about building the future, then it really should include everybody. And part of the promise of Web 3.0, is a democratized and is a sort of decentralized internet that sort of takes away the sort of bigger intermediaries and goes away from the sort of central powers that be. And so the vision for it is meant to be about a democratized internet in the hands of everyone, that like everyone can sort of own a piece of the internet, with owning things like cryptocurrency and tokens of any kind, that you can truly own them in a different way than something like Spotify or Netflix, where you don't actually own those products. You don't own the films and music and that kind of thing. So it's got an amazing promise, but actually if you're not managing to bring everybody in, then it's failing on its promise of being for everybody, or like for the people in inverted commas, if it's only for one type of person. So it's not to say I think it's like someone's fault or only one group's fault. There's kind of lots of factors at play, and probably some of it is also from like interest areas, or what those traditional, the industries that this stuff has spun out of. So if tech is very male, finance, which is then sort of spun out into crypto, so when you're talking about things like trading, that's like hyper male, and then NFTs, non-fungible tokens, often go hand in hand with the kind of Reddit culture and meme stocks and things like that. So it's just also very male dominated. And so when you put all of that together, it is this kind of hyper male, hyper masculine situation where actually even men are sometimes, I've been told, by other men, that that there is almost like a pressure to be even more masculine, or like sort of act this weird part of like this. There's a lot of bravado, especially if you're talking about the cryptocurrency area of things. That's why there's the crypto bro idea. Is I have met some crypto bros, and crypto bros are real.
Cryptobro.com, if anyone owns that. Otherwise, buy that domain.
There is
Yeah.
I won't bore you with the full details of it, but I just remember when someone was telling me that telling about how much money he made from crypto, and then going on to tell me that we were eating steak at a sort of networking dinner, and he was like, oh, I can afford to eat steak every single night. I'm like, great. What
Good
what
for
do
you.
yeah, like what do you want me to say? So there was some kind of interesting or weird culture, and so actually, so a lot of the time, women are feeling like this isn't a culture I feel part of, and I'm finding the technology and the jargon and slang around it really like confusing and overwhelming, and I'm basically being locked out by language. So that's kind of one of the many factors that leaves women out of it, and that's why I think it needs course correcting.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I don't know what your experience is, but my is that it's that we're not saying that they shouldn't be, men in tech. Of course, keep on doing that. Be awesome, be fantastic. But just add women and add, so that everybody can be included. And as you said, it's all about democratization and decentralization, which means that it should be for everybody. So in my mind, it's not an either or. We should be able to have it all and actually have many great synergies between them. We're very blessed here with Arts Dynamics because this is what we're passionate about, creativity, tech, and innovation for impact. And we do have a lot of both men and women and gender expansive people in our community who are working in the intersection between arts, creativity, tech, and entrepreneurship. And it's fantastic to see. And we've also had a lot of people comment on that and say it's actually quite rare to, have that kind of diversity. We're not making a point about it. I don't know, we've just been very blessed and lucky to have it like that. Even people from different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds. It just makes me proud and happy of this community, and hopefully we can grow this together into something really, really special. And I mean, you are here now and sharing your expertise, and since you also have a lot of, I'm sure, some resources to point people to, I'd love to hear that at the end as well. So let's not forget that. Okay, so both you're saying basically is this, that it's important to be diversity, important to have different voices, because we are building the next generation of internet. So of course it has to be with different perspectives. It has to be created so that more people feel part of it. But also, isn't it about job creation? Isn't it about financial empowerment? And there is a lot of financial opportunity as well in tech. And as you said, there is a lot of also now transition where people are losing their work, they're losing their jobs, also because of the way things are in the world. And maybe this could actually be a new way for them to, find new work or even create their new, even freelance business or company even. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree that Web3 and this kind of next major iteration of the internet does represent a really big opportunity. Yes, there are job losses that will result from things like AI, and I would count AI as broadly being part of Web3. There'll be people, whether they're listening into this or people in the kind of wider tech community, that are like, oh, that's not pure Web3. Web3 in theory is about that kind of blockchain-based decentralized technologies. What I was mentioning about ownership, but I would count AI and the metaverse in this next period of the internet. I would count it as Web3 because we are talking about sort of fundamentally different way of interacting online. And for me, AI, or I think for to sort of clarify for anyone, a lot of the time when we're talking about AI, we're talking about generative AI, and actually in practice, a lot of the time what we're talking about is ChatGPT, the kind of hero product in generative AI. But I think even, ChatGPT alone is kind of blowing things out of the water. It is automating a lot of aspects of people's jobs, but I do still see that as an opportunity that it will ultimately lead to job creation. There is this kind of transition phase where we are, losing jobs, but people also have the opportunity to be kind of training AI to help them, to help support in what they do. You could be treating AI like a VA, I suppose, or like an extension of your team, and so, or extension of yourself, in order to sort of help do the work that you do and to scale it and speed it up. And so I do, for the most part, see it as an amazing opportunity because we have got this like opportunity for a sort of next wave of entrepreneurs that can do things very cheaply, that don't necessarily need funding to then grow a business if you've got the support of something like ChatGPT. I mean, I sound like I'm sponsored by them, but it honestly, tools like that are amazing in terms of what you can do with them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how familiar people are with it in terms of using ChatGPT or other equivalent products like Google Gemini, but and I imagine actually in a sort of tech curious crowd, lots of people will have used it, but I think anyone that hasn't, because they're kind of either thinking like, oh, it's not necessary for me, or they're thinking, not yet, maybe it's a bit daunting or haven't got round to it, go and do it.
Yeah.
Make using AI part of your sort of daily diet, like sort of including vegetables in your diet. You should be including AI and sort of testing out new technologies, even if they're quite intimidating or might appear on the outside to be confusing. I think it's because there's so many media headlines that are just so, they're always quite extreme, of like,
Yes.
either the metaverse is dead or NFTs are gonna like, or like there are sort of Bitcoin millionaires, billionaires. It's all in such extremes. Like AI is going to get rid of all these jobs. But actually, there is big change coming. But I think anyone that's able to be kind of, I know it's hard to embrace change, but sort of at least open to change, will ultimately stand to sort of benefit from it. Because if you can, start testing this stuff and just getting confident with it, that's half the battle, is like the not feeling overwhelmed by it. Because it presents a really big opportunity, and I would see it as like a way of making your job easier, and also sometimes making home life easier. So like I've been like making some Instagram videos, but like doing this using ChatGPT for this purpose myself at home, is things like planning family meals of like, okay, so I like this, my toddler hates this, my partner, so I'm sort of typing in things like, I'm happy to eat kids' meals of like fish fingers, chips and beans, fine by me. My partner wants to eat like adult food, which is fair enough. The kid won't eat this, so you sort of plug all this information in, and it can, sort of create you, just ask it to give you a whole timetable, a whole plan of what to eat all week, and send you the shopping list for it, and you can take this to the shops. So it has lots of potential for just doing the things we don't want to do. So I do see it as amazing potential.
I think it's the first time I've heard it be compared to food. I love it, and you're absolutely right. I agree. It is important to start to understand more about. That's also why we're having this conversation today, because it's happening now, whether we like it or not. It's like a tsunami wave that's coming our way, and I think it's important to start to understand, what are we talking about? What are the words? Speaking of language, but what kind of different platforms are we talking about? But also not just the platforms themselves, because platforms come and go. But as an entrepreneur, for instance, what is your strategy? What do you want? Where are you going? Why is that important? And how does technology fit into that? Even this podcast that we're doing here, we're using AI not only now to use these live episodes that we're doing and to condense them into a podcast. We're using a searchable platform where you can do searchable videos, where you just type in keywords. You have this, AI bot that helps you 24/7 and can just answer questions pretending to be you. And I mean, there's so many opportunities. But also with that comes a lot of scammers. And I've had these past few days, I've had several people come to me and say, because they knew I was going to talk to you, I'm going to talk to also a membership expert later today, and he also uses AI a lot for memberships and for the membership platform that he recommends. So I spoke to a photographer the other day who just said, Sofie, can we please talk about the scammers? He and his partner, who is a visual artist, they've been looking into NFTs because people are asking for it. Investors are they're asking photographers and visual artists and say, do you have NFTs? I want to invest in NFTs. We see that at our meetups too. But he also mentioned that there are a lot of scammers, and it's hard to know when you add these technological layers, NFTs, crypto, all these things, because you're being scammed. And we also just now have a comment here, and it says, unfortunately, there are a lot of scammers in this space, says Nina. I personally have been victimized by several, is a huge reason why many people are reticent to even view crypto and NFTs as being viable long term. And she asks if you have any thoughts on how that can be remedied. I also want to add that banks are also asking if you are trading with cryptocurrencies now. And if you do, you can also be perceived as someone that they don't want to do business with. So this is a huge area we're talking about. On the one hand, this is happening. On the other hand, there are scammers and also bankers that are trying to sort of put a halt to it. So Lauren, a huge question for you. But what are your thoughts?
Where do we start?
Where do we start? I'll leave it up to you. Scammers.
So I would agree that there is a lot of scammy behavior, like a lot of bad actors in the Web3 space, so especially with something like the NFTs and crypto aspect of it, because those are, well, crypto is certainly financial. I think that's why there's been this sort of gold rush of because there were so many people that did make a bunch of money, especially in the sort of earlier, maybe like 2021, people were making, a lot of money because of the value of cryptocurrencies and NFTs going up. So there is still this kind of rushing in of bad actors who are trying to either make money or prey on the fact that people's curiosity has been piqued by the possibility of making money. And so there is a lot of it still. I'd say there's less than there had been on the sort of NFT side of this. When you mentioned about the sort of artists and photographers, I was surprised that you said people were asking, can I invest in your NFTs? I'm surprised to hear that. Even that question sounds a bit scammy to me, of like, if someone's basically saying, can I invest? That's even just like the word invest is a red flag to me, because you wouldn't really use that question if you're talking about buying somebody's art. If in the physical sense, you wouldn't say, how can I invest in your art? As AKA, how can I make money from it? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. But we've heard it. I've heard it several times.
Yeah, I'm not saying that person asking the question is definitely a scammer, but just
But it's a red flag. It could be.
Yeah, could be. And actually, a friend who's an artist also forwarded me something recently from Pace Gallery, or claiming to be from Pace Gallery in New York, saying, "We love your art, and we'd love to turn it into NFTs and sell those." And actually, it was a really legitimate looking email. With they'd gone and found the real name of the curator, and that is a gallery that really does also sell digital art and tokens, as well as physical art, or like real art, as many would see it. It is problematic. I'm trying to think what sensible suggestions I have about remediating that. I think some of it has dropped off to some extent, because I think it's when people were making the most money, that's when there were the most scammers there ready to try and pounce on people. But I would say, if you start using things like Discord, which is a sort of I suppose like a chat platform, like for me it's like sort of AOL chat rooms of back in the day, or a bit like a sort of, it's kind of like a sort of massive WhatsApp in a way, to talk with strangers. I would switch off your DMs, your direct messages on there, because people might sort of send you a message saying like, oh, I'm the moderator from this forum that you've joined about, whatever it's about NFTs or anything, just send me, or just click on this link and I'll help you do blah blah blah. And then
just click on this link ...
Yes, and they'll try and drain your crypto wallet. Having said that, I'm also seeing a lot of scams, not just in Web3. Like, I feel like it's I don't know if it just feels like there's even more than ever, but I even got a message this morning saying, I'm going to see if I can find it a second. The Royal Mail package has arrived at the warehouse and cannot be delivered due to income. Like blah blah blah. Click on this link, but like it's from somebody called Haley, and you're like, Haley blah blah at gmail.com. Like, I'm pretty sure you're not from the post office. It feels like it's kind of relentless at the moment. The communications we're getting that are scammy, and AI is exacerbating that, because AI is making it easier to create things that look real, that seem as though they're real. I'm trying to give a good example of that. Actually, one that worries me, and it worries me as a podcaster, so maybe you should be aware of this as well, Sofie, if you're not, is synthetic voice, like AI generated voice. That because me and you, both of us, our voices are on the internet, so scammers can basically take that, turn that into whatever they want. There have been some horrible scams of like people ringing up pretending to be so and so's granddaughter and saying, I'm in a car crash and I need the money instantly. It's quite worrying because sometimes it can seem like it's the technology that's the problem.
Yeah.
But so yes, having access to sophisticated technology is making it harder for us, but actually it's still the same ill intentions as they would have behaved the same with any kind of technology. It would have been just calling us on a landline phone before, but now they've just got more sophisticated technology to like mimic our voices back to family members or whoever. But yeah, it's just pretty grim behavior, and I don't think it's technology specific. It's just people misusing technology.
I think this is turning into a very, very important conversation that we're having. I knew that from the beginning. So again, thank you so much for coming, and thank you again for also commenting here live on the chat. And do feel free to comment as well if you're listening to the replay of this conversation. What you're touching upon now is important. You're absolutely right. We are here. We are talking. We're doing these podcasts, and our voices can be heard everywhere. And today you can translate them into new languages. You can also now synchronize with video like this. So as you said, if someone sends you a DM and they say, click here and blah, 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 they can also now, and I get more and more videos from people that want to sell me stuff. It's like, oh, hi, Sofie. No. I recorded your website and there's room for improvement, and, click here and we'll help you, whatever that might be. But it's like a personal message. So I just want to say it out loud. If any of you are receiving a message from either Lauren or me, make sure that you double check then that it is actually us. But this is real. I mean, as you said, if people are sending you promotional emails or sales pitches, or even reaching out as a pretend, family member that is in crisis, we are in a strange times. And on that note as well, you are being recommended, especially if you are building a business from, let's say, 0 to 7 figures, and 7 like 1 million, maybe up to 2 plus, then social media marketing, online marketing is so important. You're being told by all the experts and gurus and mentors that you should be on social media 24/7, be out there all the time, and you should syndicate your content in all sorts of forms. But again, when you do that, you're giving it to AI, and what happens next? What does it mean? What should we do?
Again, nobody's asked me that specifically, that question, and I do kind of struggle with that. I try not to give away too much, I guess, of my personal life. I guess I'm happy to sort of give away anything to do with my business and just know that all of it is out in the ether, and maybe either sort of syndicated elsewhere or maybe used against me in whatever sense. So I just kind of assume that anything I put out there is like fully out there. But I don't share like photos of my kid online and things like that, because I don't want that to be feeding the AI machine. Like, I don't want people to be able to sort of make use of that. Again, for scams and things. There's plenty of other weird stuff out there that can happen. But actually, sorry, I don't know if I.
I think it's right. It's like it's putting. So we're talking about different things. One is because we are here to teach, marketing, sales, strategy to help digitize, grow, and scale your artistic business, right? And with that comes you have to create content. You have to market the content. You have to have some sort of a lead generation tool. You have to bring people in a customer pathway and have a product pathway. All the things that are sort of involved with entrepreneurship. But what we're saying is, and what you are saying is, do that, but have clear boundaries of what you are actually talking about, what you are actually sharing, and just make a conscious decision of that. So that's number one. Number two, and I think most can probably do that, even if it can be a little bit hard sometimes to backtrack. I know I've been trying to get rid of some information myself on some social media platforms, and it's really, really hard to get rid of data because they make it really hard for you to delete old stuff. But the second thing is, as we talked about before, if you have potential buyers to say, oh, you've created this, can you turn that into an NFT as well? Or, do you accept payment in Bitcoin or whatever? Maybe also an answer would be to choose vendors, to choose platforms that are trusted and perceived as safe. But again, which are those? Do you have any recommendations for people who are looking? Okay, so what is a wallet? Where do you find them? How do you create them? If you do want to buy, cryptocurrencies or create an NFT, where do you go? Where do you find this information? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I was also just thinking when you meant just briefly back on where you mentioned about needing to sort of be everywhere on social media all the time, and yes, I definitely feel that pressure,
Feel
but
the
I
pain.
also think that what? Sorry.
Feel the pain
Yeah.
of
But I would also say it's okay to just kind of do one or two things well.
Mhm.
So if for the last couple of years I've been basically going, it was only almost like accidental to begin with, but sort of going hard on LinkedIn. And part of my reason for that was because I was finding that the more I was sharing, the more the right people were finding me, and actually it was sometimes leading to interesting paid opportunities. I do
Yeah,
think that's where a lot of basically business happens at the moment is
yeah,
LinkedIn. Which can feel actually, if you are like a creative business or either like a creative or a sort of creative entrepreneur of some kind, it can feel a bit cringe. Something like LinkedIn, it's like,
Mhm.
it feels, it is, it's very like, it's very commercial and seems like people are boasting and things like that. But actually, I think it's really necessary because you have to treat it in the same way as any kind of digital marketing or that advertising in general, which is like being top of mind for people,
yeah.
so that people like remember you, remember your work. So I think it's really necessary, any kind of creative business, to be all over LinkedIn. But yeah, I think just doing one or two things really well. So say going big on LinkedIn, but going say big on Instagram, whether it's like your works account or your own account, but
Mm,
not trying to do everything at once, and not trying to also be on Facebook and also spreading yourself too thin. If you can do a couple of things really well, that's even better. But
mm,
returning to the kind of where do you start with Web3 and those kind of platforms,
mhm.
um, I'm trying to think. I'm trying not to sort of inadvertently like endorse something that then might like what if it backfires
So
later on
the
me.
disclaimer,
But
based on the knowledge that you have
yeah,
today,
yeah. Based on
knowing
the
that
knowledge that I
things
have,
can change, and
yeah,
maybe it's good that you say that. So this is actually a disclaimer for everything that we're saying. Things change. So
yeah,
please, whatever any one of you do when you, whether it is investing your money or looking into new opportunities, do your due diligence. And if you are not, if you're not sure, reach out to the community. You've got the Arts Dynamics community, you've got
yeah.
Lauren's community. Reach out to other people and ask, and also bring, even lawyers, they could be people who are experts in that particular field who can be supportive. So with that disclaimer, out
With
there,
that,
unless AI removes it, but we come in peace, so I hope it can stay. Over to you again, Lauren.
so bearing in mind that disclaimer, so I suppose an example of a crypto wallet, a digital wallet, would be Coinbase. So Coinbase is also an exchange to sort of go and buy and sell cryptocurrencies, but you can basically start a Coinbase wallet, which is your crypto wallet, and then you can own NFTs and crypto, and you sort of own it fully, like, so that information is recorded on the blockchain, that it's in your crypto wallet, and it can't be rescinded by, say, a brand, in the same way as something like if you download a podcast to your phone, that brand, or even, whether it's Apple or the creator of that podcast, can just take it back again if they want to. But if you have something like a Coinbase wallet, a crypto wallet, you fully own that thing forever. It's forever recorded on the blockchain. So you can start a wallet on Coinbase. You can one of the sort of popular platforms for buying and selling NFTs is called OpenSea. That's and their website is, so it's like a sea, like SEA, the seas. OpenSea.io is their website, and the reason I mention that is because scammers will sometimes try and get you to click on things that look as if they're OpenSea but might have a different URL.
Open lake.
And yeah, and so that's the kind of, I suppose, most popular or
Mhm.
well-known place. And then in terms of, I'm trying to think where else you might want to start. And actually, if you're not, I suppose if you're not confident enough to have a crypto wallet of your own, and so just kind of want to sort of test it in what feels like an even safer environment, you could go with like a more traditional trading platform, like something like eToro. Like, so I own some like sort of stocks and shares and crypto in my eToro account, but just so people understand, that crypto isn't sort of fully owned by me on the blockchain. It's almost essentially owned by eToro, but well, I
How
suppose it's
would
me
you
that
spell
gets
that? If people want to look that up, how what?
ETORO.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
So, but yeah, so you basically can buy crypto in the same places as you buy stocks and shares on some platforms anyway. So, in fact, one thing I would suggest is maybe just buying a small amount of crypto just to sort of see how it works. Like, go and start a wallet, go and try buying buying some cryptocurrency or buying an NFT, I would say go like super small financially. So like, think I'm going to spend a maximum of $10, $20, something like that, just to kind of test this stuff out. Because actually some of this stuff is actually still quite clunky. But doing it makes it less intimidating or confusing, and also the user experience on this stuff is going to keep getting better and better. But as you said, Sofie, I would also just keep talking to other people about it. It's really good to have a kind of buddy that you can, like might sort of have found somebody at like a networking event and you're both really interested in this stuff. You might be thinking, yeah, how can I better monetize my art or creative work using something like NFTs or this kind of interesting world of Web3. So I think having a buddy in the space that you can sort of chat to, ask questions to, or being part of a sort of wider WhatsApp group or things like that can be really helpful. And as you say, basically joining communities. So can make it, so give some clarity, I suppose.
Yeah, and to avoid overwhelm, just look into how does that fit into your annual strategy. We also do quarterly sprints with Arts Dynamics. We have an accelerator program, so we do annual planning and also quarterly sprints where we focus on one thing each quarter, so each 90 days. So it can be a perfect thing. We're just, getting closer to quarter two, the next sort of 90-day sprint, where maybe you want to look into one of these things that we've discussed. And if you are a woman, since we're talking about that today too, and you're like, I actually do want to find out more, but I feel a little bit uneasy about it. I don't know where to start. Maybe set that as your quarter two goal and just see how would that fit into what you want to see for yourself for the rest of the year. And start small. I think I really like what you're saying there, Lauren. I mean, we don't have to start big. It could really be just testing the waters, try something smallish to get a feel for it. And often it's very nice to have someone side by side who can guide you through it. Tech overwhelm is real. I mean, I know we're setting up an online business and community here too. It can be daunting, all these different tools and how they integrate together and lead funnels and, automations. It can seem overwhelming many times, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Do you agree? But maybe it depends on what, we need help. We need someone to guide us.
I do agree. I can completely see why it's overwhelming, and especially when I was first learning about Web3, I think Web3 is particularly guilty of being jargon-tastic. So come on, like who came up with non-fungible tokens? Come on, and there's also something called DAOs. So DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. So you can basically like have a sort of group of people get together, pool money and create tokens together, and use those tokens to vote on decisions. And then you can actually execute those decisions automatically or like autonomously by voting on it. You can, because you sort of coded things on the blockchain, once you've made that decision by voting using a token, then it just happens automatically. So I think they can also be a sort of interesting if you're looking for a sort of alternative internet and interesting ways of maybe things like investing or so pursuing a passion together. I suppose it's almost like a sort of alternative to a company. But just briefly back on the tech overwhelm, I do also feel the same about the traditional platforms. I feel the same that I'm like, I actually had to write down a couple of days ago all the big ideas I'm trying to pursue at the moment, and I realized there was something like 8 of like things like I really want to grow our jobs newsletter and like sort of make it more clearly about jobs in Web3 and AI. And so, okay, so big focus on jobs newsletter, but also big focus on doing more events at Google this year, but also big focus on growing the podcast in the next couple of months, but also big focus. And I was just like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. Because it was 8 things that are meant to be either like a new idea or a sort of clearer focus. And actually, well, it's not focused at all if I'm trying to do 8 things, especially when I've got only 3 days a week of childcare in place. So need to like just take a step back and kind of work out, okay, which of those things is going to move the needle? Because also, and again, I'm sure people in this community can relate. Basically, how do I pay my mortgage? And then how do I also make sure I'm doing the things that interest or excite me? Because they're not always exactly the same thing as each other. But, there'll be aspects of your work that like pays the bills versus actually you get the sort of mental reward for. So
yeah, for sure. And I mean, as entrepreneurs, we have to follow the money. I know in the arts, we often hear, money in arts, and I talked about this in previous episodes. There is this misconception, or maybe I get where it's coming from, that art in itself is pure and it has to stand on its own. Of course, I'm totally with it, which is why it's important with public funding and, for art to be supported 100%. But at the same time, when we are business owners and we are freelancers and we have to be able to put food on the table, provide for our family, we have to follow the money. But again, it comes down to strategy. Again, what is important? What kind of artistic or creative business do we want, and why? And for some, it means that they want to build something big, and for others, it might be something smaller. And I'm finding more and more the answer is really, what to say no to. Get rid of the 9 out of the 10 things that we don't need, and to follow the money, make sure that we have enough cash flow and enough money coming in, and then we can pursue other things. And if you do have a passion for, of course, you have to have your creative outlet. I'm not saying that. But as you plan your day, your week, your quarter, and so forth, just make sure you make room for, make sure you make rooms for marketing and sales. Make sure you make room for monetization, and, set aside time for creative work, of course. But I think it's just important to be able to fund ourselves. And that's where I find that new technology is so exciting, because suddenly we are not location based anymore. We can work around the world. We can charge in different currencies as well. And even now with the crypto, if we dare to do that, we should totally. We've said that we're going to try and mint some NFTs here in Sweden. Maybe we can do that online. Maybe we can ask for your help when we do that. We've had Artily, a Swedish company. They work with NFTs and art and digital art. We've had Gnocchi as well as speakers for our events, and there's a metaverse, a decentralized sort of matrix metaverse platform. So look into those as well. But this is fascinating. So here we are now. When you, based on where you are right now and what you see around the corner, what are some of the biggest future trends that you pick up on, that you feel that either we should know of or that we probably do know of, but let's not miss them? You mentioned AI, of course, but are there any other trends that you see that is like, from your perspective, future trends?
Future trends. That's another big question.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm throwing them all at you here.
Yeah, no, I suppose something I've talked about, and that also me and you have talked about, is that I am worried about women being left behind in this next internet. So from a sort of trends and data point of view, there aren't enough women in leadership in Web3 and AI. And actually, I think probably especially with something like AI, because that does actually touch absolutely everything in a way that if Web3 is more like a sort of alternative internet, it's a little bit more fringe. AI really does touch basically every single person in the world. Like it stands to have an impact on everybody, and it's an accelerant. AI is an accelerant. So any sort of changes that are happening now, if anybody that's not kind of keeping up because they either think I'm not meant to be participating in this, or like I'm not technical, or I didn't realize I needed to actually care, there was all these overblown headlines and so it was a bit of a turn off. People that weren't kind of either like paying attention or learning about it right now do stand to get left behind, and that worries me, which is the reason I want to kind of get I was going to say get this technology, but get the sort of knowledge and confidence to everyone, because what I don't want it to happen is in like, I don't know, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, that we sort of turn around and go, almost like we sort of wake up and go, oh, all the progress has happened lightning fast, and women have been kind of written out of the picture. Of like, if we weren't founding AI businesses in 2024, then we were like, just sort of no longer part of business. And I know it's not as extreme as that, so I'm being a bit facetious, but yeah, it makes me nervous that this really pivotal stuff is happening right now, and so people that aren't paying attention stand to miss out, and that worries me, which is why I'm trying to kind of preach the good word of this stuff at the moment.
So that is a future trend that you are seeing, that we are moving in that direction, and it's like waving the flag and saying, hold on a minute.
And I suppose, sorry, connected to that as well, we don't have to go down too much on the sort of bias and AI rabbit hole, but I will make reference to it, which is that generative AI is trained on data that we have in the world. So like ChatGPT is trained on all of the data in the internet of like, what's on the internet is feeding ChatGPT and equivalent products like Google Gemini. And so if we live in a biased world, which we do, and the internet reflects a biased world, then we're going to be spitting out more of that. So when we're sort of asking AI to answer our questions and solve our problems, we're trying to, we're using this biased information is going to sort of spit out basically biased answers. So in the same way as if you try and get DALL-E, which is like a sort of image generation thing to generate you a picture of an inventor, is going to be a man, because that's been the sort of stereotype so far. So if you think of basically any stereotype we have in the world, if you ask AI to do that thing of it might be, I'm trying to think of an example, like a stay-at-home parent, you'd probably struggle to get anything other than a woman. Is that kind of thing. Like, it's going to give us more of the same. So if we don't want more of the same, then we need to start doing what we can to kind of, as I say, course correct in this area.
Yeah, and it just made me think of, we are in the, for those of you who don't know this, but we are in the middle of a huge, how can you say, I wouldn't say scandal, but if you're looking at least Twitter or X and social media, there is right now a princess hunt for Kate and Kate Gate and Kate-spiracy. We don't know where she is. Using AI, what they've done now on social media is, did you see that they caught her and Prince William walking, or at least they're now saying that might be body doubles or actors, and they've used AI to basically enhance her facial structures, her facial to enhance her face, to see if what we're seeing through the camera is actually her or if it is someone else. I've never seen that. I've never seen AI being used like that. If a paparazzi takes a photo of someone from far away, and then you're questioning, is that person? I mean, this is a royalty, but it could be a politician, could be anyone. And then you use AI to help basically, code that video or that photo and say, is this actually the person? And then AI might say, actually, no, whether that is right or no, right or wrong. I just saw that the other day. I'm just thinking it's curious based on what you're just saying as well. So anywho, that's and by the time we post this on our podcast, maybe she's revealed herself, and hopefully all is well and good with Kate. We hope so. Sending all our love from Stockholm, Sweden. Looking into the future as well. Well, two things I have, because we are about to wrap up, and thank you everybody for being so engaged. We do actually have a question about. I'm going to ask you that one now, so we don't forget it. Someone asks, Nina asks, does Women of Web3 have a community on Discord? So where can people find more information about you?
So we actually don't have a Discord, and that's partly because lots of people have told us, because we have so many beginners in our community, and they tell us that they find Discord a bit overwhelming, because it is you get a lot of notifications, a lot of this sort of wall of noise. It can feel quite exciting if you're in the right mood for it. It's quite sort of thrilling being part of a very active community, but that's not really what our community has told us that they want. So we do things like in-person events in London with a view to we want to expand in-person events elsewhere. We're doing more and more online events, and I know we were going to mention learning resources. We do have a weekly podcast, the Women of Web3 podcast.
Fantastic. We'll post information to all of that, of course. So where do you see yourself in the future? Let's say 5-10 years ahead of time. Where are you then? What are you doing?
On a beach.
Your ideal future that you wish to see yourself. The popular entrepreneurial question, your future history, my friend. Where do you see
history?
Yes.
I like it called that. And yeah, if I'm not on a beach with a cocktail, then maybe I'll be, where do I see myself? I suppose ultimately my ambition with something like Women of Web3 would be that we can make ourselves unnecessary. Of that in a magical future world, we'll have done enough to support the women, and actually also marginalized genders in the Web3 space, that there won't actually be a need for something like Women of Web3 anymore, or any kind of women in AI organizations. I don't know how realistic that is. I would love for that to be the case, that that there's so much positive change that we sort of see a more equal world, and actually it's not as necessary to have women specific organizations and things like that. Don't know how realistic that is in a 10-year time frame, but yeah, I would hope that we could see some more tangible change. I would hope that we see Web3 and AI being more diverse in terms of like who's working in it, who's leading in it, who's kind of taken advantage of this technology and taken it forward. And so I suppose for myself, I suppose I'm not even like married to needing to stay in sort of pure Web3 forever. But I'll be happy to kind of return to the same stuff I care about, which is the sort of creative side of things, technology, and then people. Like how does all this stuff marry up? Because I know we also spoke previously, just before we started recording, an old community that I used to run. It was basically a sort of side hustle when I was working in ads agencies. That was called Power Social, and that was all about the future of the creative industries, particularly the commercial, or like especially the commercial creative industries, so things like advertising, etc. And what was the impact of things like technology, or like when Trump came into power, how that has an effect on like freezing client budgets for creative work. So I suppose I've basically always been future facing. So if I'm not specifically running Women of Web3, I would hope that it's something else at the sort of that sort of confluence of maybe I'll just be calling myself a futurist by that point. But thinking about how do like helping people be adaptable to change and what comes next, whether it's in sort of pure technology or creative meets tech.
Yeah, I love that. And what can we do to help you?
What can we do? Good question. Actually, I think that the more men that we can get sort of interested and open-minded to how organisations like Women of Web3 can help, then even better. Because what I wouldn't want is for men to think that they can't, I guess, be part of this or participate in this. Like so far, a lot of our in-person events have basically been exclusively female, and they're not intended to be. We don't sort of we're not advertising as women only. But I can absolutely understand why you'd have to be quite brave as a man to turn up to an event like that. But it is meant for everyone. It's intended for everybody. So I would love to see more men, I suppose, engaging with a cause like this.
And holding the space, I would imagine, because again, it's not either or. We need both. And I really want to emphasize that with Arts Dynamics too. It's so important that it's not against anything, but rather what can we do to improve what can be improved, and how can we work together to get there. That's a whole different energy in that, instead of the whole sort of polarization of who's good and who's bad. That's not what we're talking about here either.
Exactly. And a slight tangent, but things like AI can basically help us do more of what we want to do, and sort of like following our passions and following our creative instincts. And so I also think that, just thinking about the sort of the future, I think there will also be a sort of renaissance and interest in human creativity. Like, and that sounds kind of ridiculous to sort of make it distinct from AI generated creativity, but I think it will be kind of revered in a different way than it already has been. That so things like theatre, actually, I think particularly, is something that is like one of the few things you can't generate using AI. Of like what's special about something like theatre is like being there physically in person. The fact that it's not going to be exactly the same every single night. And because of the sort of live nature of it, like even in future, you're not really going to have actors like being fed their lines via, whatever thing on their eyes or ears. I'd hope they're still learning their lines in future. And so something like that is going to be really unique. Like there's stuff that's uniquely human creativity will have this whole new it will be revered in a different way. And I suppose I'm excited for that. It's like really valuing what we can create, and as well as valuing what we can create with support from technology.
Yeah, I love that. Final two questions. Number one, is there any question I haven't asked you, or a question you would want to answer?
No, I think we're good. We've really like covered the whole gamut here.
Yeah, it's been fun. And finally, is there anyone who you would recommend us to invite to this show? Who should be here, and who should we invite as a guest? Who would you want to see as a guest?
I can probably send you a whole list, actually. But one person who might be quite interesting is, she's called Hollywood. So she's obviously got a brilliant name, Hollywood. And she has come from, I'm trying to describe or like almost like pigeonhole her is quite hard to describe what she's done. But she had worked in things like fashion, and then ended up at a platform called Rareable, which is a sort of NFT platform where she was head of artist partnerships. So it was her job to build relationships with digital artists in the whole space. And she now runs her own business called Hollywood Labs. And she just does lots of interesting things at the sort of intersection of things like digital fashion and technology and creative stuff. But she's just a very sort of, I find her a very interesting person. She's spoken on a panel alongside me, which we put on the podcast before. So yeah, I think she'd be a good recommendation.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And if anyone who's listening to this has any ideas, please let me know. Let us know. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway from today's talk. I just had a comment here. Thank you for a very, very interesting talk with a flower next to. Thank you. Can't see your name, but thank you so much for that lovely comment. Really appreciate that. And for you, Lauren, to take your time and to be here. But I really mean that it is for us to have, because this conversation today has really been about, not only claiming your space as a woman, as someone who wants to do more and be more, but it's also about holding the space. And we've got a space here. You got your community. We've got this community. We're able to hold the space and to do more great things together. But that means we also need help to open up doors, to tap into networks where all these amazing people are. So if that is you or someone just let us know. I mean, we're super open to, exploring all of this together and have fun. I know we can sometimes see negative headlines around us and it feels as if, there will be no tomorrow. But I don't know. I believe, that there is hope for sure. And I also believe that we can create the future we wish to see. Yeah, there might be some turbulent years ahead. But a sailboat, you raise your sails and then you use the winds and you sail. So in this case, it's like, what do we want to do and what do we want to create? And most importantly, who do we want to do it with? So Lauren, thank you so much again for your time, for your expertise. We haven't even talked about you and women in the UK. So we have to find out more about that, of course, and feel free to send us more information as well. We'll be happy to spread the word. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, I've really enjoyed the chat. It's I've covered lots of things that we haven't really spoken about before, so I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're all welcome back next week when we have another guest on this show. That person has already been confirmed, but I will not tell you just yet who that is. I also have thrown in a bonus masterclass session with Stu McLaren, who is a membership expert. We know the creator economy is booming, and one of the best ways for creators to monetize and create predictable recurring revenue is through subscription models and is through memberships. And we've talked a lot today about Web3, which is great for community building, and all these platforms that we're talking about is great for community building and to building these memberships. So I can highly recommend you tune into that talk as well. If you're with us live, you can hear that later today in a few hours' time. But I will also post it on YouTube and our podcast platform. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much. Tune in to artsdynamics.com for more information. Check out Lauren, send her some love, and let us know what you think of this episode, and see you again next week. Over and out.